Hey, beautiful souls. In today's episode, in just a minute, I am going to introduce you to someone named Carrie Cardozo. She is an incredible master psychic, but she has all of the gifts. So she's also a healer and an entrepreneur. And we're going to learn so much about her, the way she works, how she came into her gifts. Everyone has a story of how they come into their gifts, and hers is actually pretty profound. So I won't talk on too long before we get started, but it's interesting. Carrie and I have some friends in common and have been just crossing paths and missing each other. So this was a wonderful chance to get to learn more about her, to get to connect with her. And she really is a medium, psychic, healer, reader, leader that has a lot of integrity and that has such strong belief in this idea that everyone has these psychic abilities and anyone can learn to use their own gifts, which you guys know I feel very strongly about. So without further ado, I'm so excited to introduce you to Carrie Cardozo. Hey, beautiful souls. Welcome back or welcome in for another episode of Spirit Speakeasy. I am very excited to introduce our guest today. I'm just going to launch into her bio because I'm really chomping at the bit to get into this conversation. Our guest today is Carrie Cardozo. She is a master psychic leader, master healer, business consultant, author, podcast host, and creator of Soul Theory, which is her #1 psychic development community. Carrie was born a psychic and used her abilities in early childhood unbeknownst to her. She believed that there was nothing different about her and thought that everyone saw the people and energy that she saw daily. It wasn't until her vision started to come to fruition and tragedy struck that she really dug deeper into who she was and what she was meant to be doing with her psychic gifts. Carrie works with experts, authors, authorities, leaders in their field, and teaches them how to open, connect, and activate their gifts and understand how to use them with power, integrity, accuracy, and for their business. Welcome in, Carrie Cardozo.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
I am really excited. I actually just want to give you a little compliment as we're getting started. I was just going through some of your material. You have your own podcast, as we just mentioned, and you've been interviewed quite a bit. And I really love the way that you seem to be making an intentional effort to get clear with language. It's one of my kind of constant points in this work. We don't have this universal language. So I really appreciate you trying to make sure you're defining things for people as you go.
Thank you. And I do that because one of the things that I have found is that I didn't learn from anybody else but myself. So I have my own words for some things. And
Yeah.
and I'll say something and people are like, "Oh, but somebody else says it means this." So I always explain. I try to really explain it so people really get it and they're not just going off of what they think something means.
Which I think is so important because there is already so much stigma and confusion and misunderstanding in this work. If it's okay with you, I would love to start at the beginning and just invite you to share some of your story of how you came into your gifts. I know we all come into this work a little differently.
Yeah. Yeah, I would love to. So I came into my gifts slow. I guess I came into them slowly. So I was born a psychic, but like you said in my bio, I didn't realize that people weren't seeing spirits, that everybody didn't see them, that people didn't see the things that I saw. And I was really in a space of going back and forth between, am I just imagining this stuff? Am I just seeing it in my head versus does it really exist? And life got busy. I had a child very young in life. I got married very young and life just got crazy and lots of things unfolded. In about the age of 28, 27, 28, around there, I was talking to one of my very close friends and I was going through a divorce. And I remember saying to her, like, I'm so disappointed in myself and I'm so stressed. And she's trying to, make me feel better. I'm, 28 years old, 3 kids, about to get divorced. And I said to her, well, I don't know why I'm so upset because we see everything that happens to us in our life. And she was like, we what? And I was like, oh, well, we see all these events. And she was like, no, we don't. And I was like, oh, wait, you don't see all the events in your life? Like my daughter being born, me being diagnosed with cancer, my parents separating, getting divorced. I'd already seen it all. And because life was so crazy, I just kind of blew it off. And like I thought about it and it would come back in. But then fast forward about 5 years, and I was running a $16 million company, not my own, a different person's company. And I was building this new life. I had met this amazing man. We were building a future together. And one Sunday morning, I woke up and he had passed away. I had
Wow.
found him unresponsive. And it totally shattered my entire life. And no longer did I care about the successes in my business, about like nothing. It's almost like everything that I had ever cared
Yeah.
about didn't exist anymore. And I set out on this journey of really understanding what happened when we passed. And very early on, I ended up meeting mediums and psychics. And every single time I met one, they'd be like, but you're psychic. Like you have the gifts. Like it's you. And as I kept saying this to me, I started to realize like when Mike passed, I could feel him immediately. I could hear him. I woke up the morning of his passing and heard he had passed before I found him.
Wow.
There was just so many things. And I can remember even being in this space, multiple different places, whether it was when I first found him or in the hospital or at his funeral, of just feeling this intense energy of calmness and everything was going to be okay, and just knowing. And that is really what started my journey. Is when he passed, it threw me into this need to really understand the spirit world, to really understand energetics and mediumship and psychic abilities. And very quickly, I started to see that all the things and the ways that I had been living my life and that I had been experiencing life were very different than other people, and
Yeah.
that I already was getting the messages. And I remember one medium was like, she said, "Oh, I did a past life regression with her or something." I was told by my guides to go see her for past life regression, so I did. And she had asked me like why I was there, what brought me there, and I said, "Oh, my fiance had passed." She goes, "Well, I can speak to him for you." And I was like, "Well, I can speak to him." And later on, she goes, "When you first told me that, I was like, this girl's crazy." Like
Oh,
she
that's
thinks she can
funny.
talk to her, her fiance, her past fiance. But when we actually sat down to do the call, to do the session, he said to her, "I will not speak to you. I only speak to Carrie." And she was
Wow.
blown away. She was like, "Oh my gosh, like you really do speak to him." And so that really started my journey of my psychic gifts and being open to my
Wow.
psychic gifts.
Well, I'm so sorry for your loss first. I can
Thank you.
imagine, you had just gone through what sounds like a really tough divorce. I don't think any divorce is easy, even the
No,
even the
no
amicable
divorces.
ones, but it sounds like yours was extra tough. We have so many matching pictures. It's so interesting as
Yeah.
I've kind of listened to your story through other people. Uh, and I can't even imagine you restart this life, you find this partner, you feel like, okay, this is it. Things are going. I'm in this company. And then I'm sure it just feels like the rug gets pulled out from
It
under
did.
you.
Yeah.
I would love to just dive or dig a little deeper into how you said that you kind of saw or knew or understood some of these points in your life a little
Mhm.
bit ahead.
Yeah.
I think, again, with the language, it can be so confusing because we all experience things a little bit differently as well.
Yeah.
Will you just talk a little bit about how that was showing up for you? How you were, it sounds like you were maybe understanding it in a softer way and in the background a little bit, but I'd love to hear from
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. So as a young child, I would say between the ages of about 4 or 5 and probably about 10 years old, maybe 12. But then it was like you get caught up in your middle school, teenage
Yeah.
years. So I would be in my room doing something and I would see a vision. And all of a sudden I would find myself in the vision, almost like acting it out in my room. And then it would like hit me and I would open my eyes and be like, that was so weird. Like, why was I doing that? And this were things such as I can remember at about 6 years old, not even knowing how babies were made at 6 years old. Like I lived
Yeah.
in, like a really small town. We didn't watch TV. We weren't allowed to watch TV. I didn't even know how babies were made. And waking up frantic that I was pregnant.
Wow.
Frantic. And then I'd be like, wait a second, why would I have a baby? And like it would be these weird things like that. I saw myself having cancer. I would see these visions very, very clearly. And that continued on into my adult life. In my fiance, I can remember being in the shower, washing my hair, and seeing him in a hospital bed, seeing him unresponsive, being at his funeral. I would see these glimpses. It's like rapid succession of visions that I would see. And then
Mhm.
all of a sudden I'd be like, why am I thinking about that? That's just so weird. And then just go on with my life. And this
Yeah.
happened over and over and over. So these things became almost like I wouldn't be thinking about them every day in the moment. But when they would
Yeah.
happen, I'd be like, oh my God, I saw this. I saw this exactly how it's unfolding. And some things were exact and some things were not exactly. But I can remember so clearly getting out of the limo at my wedding, 19 years old. And I was just almost like hit with this energy and just saw very clearly that we would not stay together. We just would not stay together.
Yeah.
And so I have always had these. I still have them. They're just these really deep knowings as well as visions that come. I'm a seer. I can do every gift, but seeing is the one that just always, I'm always seeing energy.
Yeah.
So I would see them and then they would unfold.
So interesting. I can recall points like that too through childhood where it's like mine was maybe a little different than the way you're describing it, or maybe similar and we just have different words.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it's just these flashes of things. And I might think at the time, oh, why am I thinking of this? Or this is weird. And then, like you said, you just go on about your life. And sometimes it's a long period of time later. And all of a sudden, something strikes you or me as like, oh, wait a minute. I saw this already, or I knew this, or I had an inkling of this, and it's come lots of different ways over the years. I really think most people have some version of that. And one of the things I love that I've heard you say is something I'm always beating the drum of, is that we're so conditioned in our society, in our culture, in our world to, not trust ourselves inside, to look outside for answers, to think other people know better for us than us. And so we get conditioned kind of off of these knowings that we have and think like, oh, I can't trust that, or that's weird, I need to put that to the side. How did you finally, because it sounds like it's a little bit of a whirlwind as you're coming to maybe accept your gifts, how did you finally start to shift the way that you're working with them and work in more of an intentional way?
So, and I totally agree with you. First of all, I think every single person has that knowing, and I believe every single person is psychic. It's
I
just a
agree.
matter of
Yeah.
understanding how to tap in.
Yeah,
So
totally.
and we get those, and whether it's because I think it's for multiple different reasons, whether it's because your soul has access to the blueprint and it's a fated event on your blueprint and you already know it, or because you're connected to a potential that you've already created based on things that you've done, and it's just showing your
Yeah.
soul, your soul showing you of what you've created and what can unfold.
Yeah.
But for me personally, with my gifts, because I went from like, okay, here I am just navigating through life and spirit shows me things when it wants to show me things, or spirit show
Right.
up when they want to. I am one of those people that if I'm going to do something or know something, I master it. And so about 6 months after my fiance passed away, I lost my job. There had been a freak accident the week that I was away for my fiance's funeral. And when I came back, that freak accident ended up unfolding to my boss basically losing his businesses based on his choices. So I lost my
Wow.
job. And here I was, 3 children, single mom, fully responsible for everything, and no job.
Yeah.
And about a month or two leading up to that, my guides kept saying to me, you have to leave, you have to leave, you have to do this, you have to do this. So luckily, I had the means, and I spent the next 18 months and not only doing this, but a good portion of my time just mastering my psychic abilities. I would bring my kids to school in the morning and I would spend that solid 6.5 hours that I had, or 5.5 hours, depending on, the time frame, just practicing my psychic abilities by myself or with my guides. And I really dug into, what does this mean? Show me this, help me to understand this.
Yeah.
And they were incredibly supportive, but also I very clearly knew this is what I had to do. And there were periods of time during that 18 months that I would work on my business or do something else, or, I started a podcast, but I spent
Yeah.
so much, I wrote a fiction book that has never been published, but
I was
it's
going
so
to ask you, what
cool.
did you think your business was at that
Yeah.
time that you were working on?
I thought I was a business consultant,
Yeah.
that I was just going to go, because that's what I did.
Yeah.
I was a chief operating engineer of this big corporation. And I was in this space of like, I'm just going to go do business consulting. Business is something I'm really good at. And every single
Yeah.
time I did it, my guides were like, no, you're a psychic. And I was like, no, I'm not. Like I am, but I'm not. That's not what I'm doing for work. And I really spent a ton of time on my gifts and abilities. So after that 18 months worth of time, there was nothing in the psychic world I couldn't do. I had met probably about 4 or 5 different psychics who I thought along the way were going to help me, and I ended up teaching them. I had walked out of that 18 months phenomenally connected. I trusted, my accuracy was close to 100%. Like it was very very powerful transition in time for me. And I really did dedicate a lot of my energy to that. That's all I did. I lost
Wow.
friends. I cut out activities that I was doing. I really just focused on the healing that I needed to do from losing my partner,
Yeah.
healing for my children, and really focusing on what was next for myself.
One of the things I've heard you say that I love that I don't feel like enough psychics and mediums are saying is it really does all hinge on us and knowing ourselves, understanding our own energy, understanding, in my work, we call it discernment, but understanding, oh, this is an emotion that I'm having or something that I'm going through versus, oh, this is information about you or about someone else in the room. Or so I love this idea that you really did have to do some of your own healing and some of your own understanding through this development. Is that where I know all of these gifts that you said you really are self-taught or guide taught or whatever version of that fits?
I taught
Is
probably, yeah.
Yeah, is that also where the healing aspect of your work comes in? Did you kind of learn it all in that 18-month period?
I learned a lot of the foundations of it in that 18-month period. Now, I will tell you what, I'm still learning to this
Oh,
day. Like,
yeah.
I'm always learning. So I don't mean like I learned everything in the 18 months and now it's just, just doing it. But yeah, a lot of it. And I did primarily my own healing during that time as well. But also the other aspect is I had 3 children and they had suffered a tremendous loss,
Yeah.
and it sent one of my children into medical issues from anxiety and from a whole slew of things. And so when my son was about 13 years old, so it was a couple years after, it was about right after the 18-month mark. The doctor told me that he had an autoimmune disorder and it had caused blindness in one eye, and the doctor was like, he's going to go blind in the other eye. There's really nothing we can do but put an
Wow.
implant in. Can we do that? And I was like, no, 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 you can't do that. And so I consulted with my guides, and I say this with a caution to anybody listening this. I am a very good psychic. I 100% trust my guides. I know what I'm hearing is accurate, and I pulled my son out of medical treatment with the knowing that in 3 months he would go blind, totally blind. And I did not bring him back to a doctor for 3 years. His vision is 20/20 in that eye. And I did a
Wow.
ton of work on him, directed by my guides, with also like knowing myself, knowing energy. I'm a phenomenal energy reader and energy mover. And so I really had like on the job training between helping my children, healing myself. I was brought a couple people during that time as well who really wanted me to help. And it was one of those, I'll help you and I'll tell you what to do, but you make your own decisions,
Yeah.
that one of those things. So everything I've ever done, it's been through hands on, get in the energy. Here you are. You have to figure this out.
Yeah.
And it has been a very powerful period of time for me back then, but still now I still feel like I'm always learning, always
Yeah.
doing new things.
It is one of the many things I really appreciate about you is I'm always saying that as well. We're always learning and growing as long as we're here. I had one of my mentors passed away a couple years ago and she was in her 80s and she would say the same thing that, today I know this or I understand this, but in 10 years we might understand differently. So I think it
Yes.
is just such an important thing for people to realize, like you said, it's not just like we go into this little training and then boom, we're done. And it's like, smooth sailing from there. Life is still happening. Chaotic things are still going on. We still have kids and families to attend to. How did you? It really sounds like you just went through so much leading up to this discovery and one thing after another. How did you find, I guess, the confidence within yourself? How did you really move through all of that self doubt that we all have to step into your empowered authority in this way? It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And I'll tell you what, it wasn't easy. Like none of this stuff is easy at
Yeah.
all. And I know a lot of people struggle with this. And even to this day, I think any single time I'm like really expanding or doing something crazy, I'm always like, oh, got to figure this out again. So I think a huge part of my confidence comes from my trust in myself, my abilities, and just knowing that like no one else is going to fix this for me.
Yeah.
I was a young mom, 3 kids. I am, 99% of the time solely responsible for them. And I know that if I don't show up for myself, nobody else is going to show up either.
Yeah.
And one of the things that was really important to me was to understand what was going on in my life and what was going on with me, as well as what I was really here to do. So the more that I trusted myself and knew what I was capable of and believed in myself, that everything else I knew I could navigate through. But I will tell you the one thing that I always say, and I don't know if this is like the best thing to say or not, but even my kids say it, is that I'm always like, when Mike died, it was the hardest time of my life, the worst time. The only thing that got me through were my children. And whenever I face something hard, I'm like, listen, I got through Mike dying. This is nothing. This is a breeze. And I really do look at that. I look and celebrate the things that I was able to overcome
Yeah.
and recognize that the other things that we're going through, they're not that big of a deal. And if I could do one, I can do the other. And it also taught me, and I think this is maybe one of the most important things, is that the most important thing in life are the people that you care about. It's not the car that you drive. It's not even the impact that you make on the world. It is the connections that you have and the people that mean most to you. Everything else can be taken away, even those people,
Yeah.
even those people. And so I really pay attention to the things that are most important to me and the things that light me up the most. And I make sure I focus on those instead of the things that are making me uncomfortable. I do the uncomfortable things,
Yeah. Well,
but life is really about aligning with the things and connecting with those things that really make us feel at home, have that peace feeling. And that is what I will go back to a lot of the time.
I think it's so important because I think often people have a misconception about this work, and we still
Yeah.
have very human lives, is kind of the way I always say it. How do you, I will kind of come back to wanting to understand how you went from that getting fired and having to recreate your own business to
Yeah.
stepping into the business world as a psychic, which is a whole different thing. But with such a busy life and so much that you hold, how do you, like, do you have any tips and tricks to carve out those times or be more intentional with the relationships that you create space for?
Yeah, and actually it's been a priority of mine lately. I recently bought another business, so I own a couple
Oh, exciting.
companies. And yeah, it's been I went from having, I only worked a couple hours a day on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday to now I literally work around the clock. And so I really have had to work to carve out that time because my spiritual practices, my energy maintenance, time with my children,
Yeah.
I love to travel. I have big, like sport dog, working dogs. And so there's a lot of things that I like to do. And so it is so important to be intentional about what's most important to you. So even if that means that like you wake up 15 minutes earlier just to have that quiet time, my quiet time is where I like do my channeling, connecting with my guides. And so I'm really intentional about the things that help me to be successful. And I don't just mean like what move the number on, on your bank account successful.
Yeah.
I mean the
Successful
things
as a
that
human, not a business
right.
person.
Yeah, successful as like I actually feel good today. I'm not burnt out. I'm loving what
Wow.
I'm doing. I'm reaching my goals. I have great relationships. And so I really do carve out a lot of time for myself. And as a single mom, that was very hard. Not just time-wise, that was hard,
Yeah.
but feeling guilty, feeling like I needed to give my kids everything that they desired, or if I was going away by myself or my kids missing out. Because there were years that I did not have the extra income, the extra money. I just didn't have it. And so, really being intentional about what I specifically needed and making space in my calendar and my day in every day to do that. I remember when I
Yeah.
first started my business, I didn't have money at all. If anything, my accounts were in the negative. I just remember being like, I'm going to do when I have money, because it's always like, when I do this, I'm going to do one self care for myself a month. I do it every day, if not twice now.
That's great.
Like it's just so stinking important to whether it's walking in the woods, connecting with yourself, going for a massage, just sitting and, in silence, just being there. It just
Yeah.
completely changes everything. And it helps you to be able to hold the energy that you need, especially as a psychic, helps you to navigate your businesses, helps you to be there for the people that you want to, whether it's for your children or your partners or your animals or friends, it doesn't matter. But I'm
Yeah.
able to have amazing relationships, great connection to my kids, be able to travel for events, run multiple companies because I'm intentionally taking care of myself.
It's so important. And I think it's really also important just to acknowledge that it can look different ways at the different ages and stages of our lives. I also
Yeah.
started having kids young and was a young mom and a single mom for a long time. My kids are grown now. So my life looks very different in the
Yeah.
time. But to your point, I can remember a time where I had a wellness center and was primarily a massage therapist and was going in um, more than I start at an hour early just to like heat the towels in the room. And I started going in 2 hours early, sometimes at like 5:30 in the morning to get my meditation
Yeah.
time or to get so, and it doesn't have to be expensive self-care.
Right.
Anyone can start right where they are and be doing little things, whether it's like you said, a walk in the woods or just 5 minutes alone in your car or
Yeah.
start where you are sounds like a really
Yeah.
important piece of it.
There was even a period of time, you might relate to this, that going to the grocery store by myself was like
Oh my
self-care because I
gosh.
didn't
Yeah.
have to, I had
Such a
3
treat,
children with
right?
me. Yeah. Yeah, it was so it doesn't have to be expensive, but it's what you need most.
Yeah. And
What
it
you wanna
will
focus on.
expand and change. And I feel like for me and the way I view it, I think even our relationship with our psychic gifts is important. I think people often, one of the drums I'm always beating is like, it's not a light switch, it's a relationship. It's
Yeah.
having a relationship with that understanding and however our gifts present and whichever versions we're working on or with right now. But it's building a relationship. It's not just clicking a light switch of, I always joke and early in my work, I got the books and sat with the crystals on my head and trying to like open things and turn them on. And now I'm like, oh, that's so ridiculous. Like it's a
Yeah.
relationship, not a light switch. And I think it's just so important for anyone who's trying to develop their own gifts or, something else I heard you say that I'd love to chat about is the future is psychic. Like
Mhm.
it is something that's going to be expected of everyone. It's something we all have access to, this group of unseen, non-physical senses. So really just, I guess, making space as we all shift and grow and yeah, awaken to some degree, right?
Yeah, one of the things that I say to my clients is being psychic isn't like being a dentist. Like if you're at the dentist office, you're working and performing on a client. Being psychic is part of who you actually are. So you
Yeah.
don't shut your eyes when you walk into a room because you're done seeing for the moment. You don't shut your ears off. So our psychic abilities don't shut off. So you're not like, oh, I'm psychic and I do a session and then I go about my day and I ignore all the gifts that I have or the way that I can navigate life. It's a way of being. It's who you are. So we don't shut our gifts off. We integrate them into the way that we're living our life. And the more you integrate your gifts, they're your soul gifts. So if
Yeah.
you're in this life to really access your soul, then you also are in this life to access your psychic gifts. Soul is energy, so are psychic gifts. So they go hand in hand. So we don't connect to our soul to find out something and then go live in our ego and live in our human. We
Yeah.
find this beautiful way to integrate it in every aspect of our life. And when we're able to do that, we see the world differently and we process the world differently. So we're able to process the energetic aspect of the world, not just the sounds and the physical. We're actually seeing the energetics. This helps us to make more aligned decisions, helps us to keep the people in our life that we want to, helps us to manifest faster, stay healthier. It just completely changes the way you live your life because you're not shutting off the energetic aspect, and energy is in every single thing.
Yeah.
So, the reason the future is psychic is because of the fact that the energy around us, the vibration is rising, which means it's impacting us harder and faster, and it's going to have a bigger role in everyone's life. And so, the more that you can access your own psychic abilities and actually work with the energetics of the universe because of the fact that it's there potent more than ever, the more successful you will be in your life, in your relationships, in the impact that you want to make. And it's part of
Yeah.
the process, it's part of what we're here to do.
Do you think so? For me, I agree with you. I don't think we turn it on and off and it's on sometimes and off sometimes. I do feel like we can more intentionally focus our awareness to the book we're reading. Or, yeah, sure, we might still be seeing mental pictures or receiving information in other ways. But do you encourage your clients and students to just be intentionally focusing their awareness to, I think we have so much coming at us all the time from all directions. I think if we're taking in every single thing all the time, then I think that's almost too much and
Mhm.
overwhelming. So, kind of learning how to more intentionally focus our awareness, is that something that you suggest, maybe not in the way I'm saying it, but
Yeah, yeah, 100%. No, similar to the way you're saying it. So I use psychic senses the same way I would relate to any of my other senses.
yeah,
If I walk into a mall, I'm not like scanning the mall to look at everybody's outfit and what they're doing. I'm focused on what I'm doing.
right.
So I'm not picking up other people's energy. I am a phenomenal energy blocker. I will block anyone's energy. I don't want anyone's energy on me, and I don't want anyone taking my energy. I'm not interested in reading everybody's energy, but I have a very powerful intention that I live my life by. I want to be in alignment with the highest good. I want to be aware of the things that I need to be aware of. I want to be moving through this life with intention and with purpose. So I will be driving and I will hear, watch out. And I kid you not, half a mile up the street, there's a cop. I'm like, thank you. So I have very clear intentions that I only get the information that I actually need, and I'm specific about it. So I don't want people's energy of,
Yeah,
the people I'm on the flight with. But if there's a danger on that flight, let me know. I want to
yeah,
know. If I'm not supposed to be in a certain place, let me know. So I'm very, and I don't mean let me know, meaning like, oh, guides tell me, but my sensors will go off. I
right.
will be aware of that. The same way I would have, my eyes on certain things. Like if you have your kids, and my kids are older as well, so this doesn't pertain to me. But if you're out and about and you have your kids and they're running around, but you're watching them and you're aware. Where if you didn't have your kids in the moment, you might not be watching them like a hawk like that.
Totally.
So I encourage you to use your psychic abilities in a way that supports you, not drains you. And I am not one of those like pick up everything, read everything. You don't need that information. You
Yeah.
don't need it. So it's just what I need, just what's going to be most important to keep me on my path of the highest good with the biggest impact that I can make.
I love the way you explain that too, because I do think it's such a common question or misconception for people that we're reading everyone all the time. And it's like, oh, I don't need to do that. Like, I definitely have enough, in my own human world happening, or that's important to me to know.
Yeah.
Something else that you talk about that I really love, because I, again, don't think enough are talking about it, is this idea of like, where is your information coming from? Is this my
Hmm.
own soul pinging me and saying like, alert, alert? Is this a red flag in my body? Is this a guide? Is this, my grandma? Is this, who is this information coming from? And it drives me a little bonkers. It's one of my little pet peeves when someone's like, they're telling me that you need to da da da. And I'm like, oh, who's telling you? Like,
Yeah.
because
Who
I might
said?
take that information different if
Yeah.
it's like my grandma who never likes my haircut, or do you know what I mean? Like your
Yes.
soul's blending with mine and telling me this is the information you're discerning about the situation. I think it's just so important to, I don't know, spread that word, because I don't know that. I think people get excited about the work, and then that discernment is not always part of the focus or intention. So I love that you focus on that too.
Yeah, that is the most hands down, the most important thing you can do as a psychic. People do not realize, and I don't say this to scare people because it shouldn't be scary, but it should be more powerful and help you to stand in your power, is that as many good spirits as are out there, there's just as many mischievous and quote unquote bad spirits, and that can tell you information that you don't necessarily want or don't or isn't helpful. They can lead you, they can trick you, they can make you go astray. So when people say to me, oh, I got this information, I'm like, well, where'd you get it from? And they're like, I don't know. It is actually really important for you to know. So, one of the things that I work on first and foremost is I actually don't teach people how to connect with their guides or departed loved ones or anything else until I teach them how to read energetics. And here's a great example of this, and it's a touchy subject for some people. There was a phenomenal, I assume you know who Doreen Virtue is.
I do. Yeah.
Yeah. And several years ago, she came out saying that Jesus told her that the things that she was doing were the devil's work.
I
And
remember.
one of the things that is very clear, and if you're an energy reader, you can read the energy around the being who is communicating with her, and it is not Jesus. She is not communicating with Jesus. I know she thinks she is, but it's not. Spirits can lie to you. They can say whatever they want, energy won't lie. And there's a difference there. So a being can come and tell you anything, but the energy behind the words that it's speaking to you will tell you something totally different. So an energy can show up and say, I'm your grandma. If you can tap into energy, you'll know that's not my grandma. The same way somebody can knock on your front door and say, hey, I'm the mailman, not be dressed like the mailman or the police officer, or be dressed like that and not be it. Spirits do it too.
Hmm.
And a lot of people go astray in this space because they're connecting to something that isn't what it says it is. And we see this a lot. And more, you can call them like trickster guides or whatever, are coming to earth because everybody wants to connect and everybody wants information. This is why sometimes people will connect with a psychic and they don't get accurate information. It's not that that psychic wasn't connecting, but they weren't connecting with valuable information. They weren't connecting with truth and light information. This is why all psychics and all mediums need to learn how to read energetics, not how to talk to beings. Once you learn how to read energetics, you can talk to beings, because
Yeah.
even if a being comes forward, you do your discernment. So you understand who that being is and what they're here for. This is how you can tell the difference between whether you're talking to an angel or a celestial being or an angel or an elemental or a fairy,
Right.
reading their energetics. If you read their
Well,
energetics, those are different.
they feel totally different
Totally
too.
different.
I'm so on board with you with this. And I always joke with my clients and students and communities and say, like, it's not the sexy work. So people don't want to do it. But
Yeah.
the starting place is your own intuition, your own emotional processing. Because to your point, someone could be a psychic and blending with your energy and truly connecting, but because they have some fear-based thing that they haven't worked through, it's coming through that lens.
Mm-hmm.
So it is working with our own energy, reading for ourselves, understanding our own emotions. And then if it's appropriate or if it's part of that person's journey, we can, not everyone's even drawn to mediumship, for
Yeah.
example.
Correct.
So, and I started very much that way, not like no mediumship, really energy work and the psychic stuff. And then it was angels for me. And then it was guides later. And then it was the loved ones, the spirit people, like the loved ones on the other
Yeah.
side were the very last. And
Yeah.
quite honestly, I wasn't interested. They
Yeah.
started coming to me. And then I was like, okay, hold on. Like, what is
Yeah.
this? Kind of
That's
like you
usually
said,
how it
like,
happens. Usually
what's
you're pulled into
happening?
mediumship. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, why do I know this information, from this
Mhm.
person that is this person's validating? And so I think it's so important because people, maybe see a medium on TV, which I think is wonderful that it's becoming more in our common vernacular to even know these words and what this is.
Yeah.
Of course, there's heavy editing that happens. We all know that.
Yeah.
But they might think, oh, that's what I want to do. I want to be a medium. And then they want to jump into that pool, not realizing, like, okay, well, how are you even discerning between two people if you don't even know what's happening in your own energy? So it's not
Yeah.
that they can't do it, it's just that there's a progression that I think not everyone is super excited about.
It's not the pretty work at all. It's the uncomfortable, the tears, it's just not, but it is necessary.
Yeah.
And I think, to your point, a lot of psychics of the past didn't do it because healing wasn't a huge thing.
Yeah.
And I've worked with a lot of psychics who were psychic and did this work longer than I am old. And one of the things that I work with them on is really understanding energetics, because mediums get burnt out because of the grief and the heavy sadness around it. They take on that energy because they don't know how to work with their energetics. There's a famous medium who's on TV, and there's a couple, but I'm not going to point out who he is. Every single time he's done filming, he ends up in the hospital sick
I
because
know what
it's
you're saying.
because he's
Yeah,
giving,
I
giving,
do.
giving.
And I'm like, why are we not having boundaries?
Yeah,
Why are we not separating when we're done?
exactly.
Why are we becoming it instead of, working with it?
Right. And
You're so
so
right.
it's one of the things that has to shift for psychics is we can't just be a telephone. We are not just telephones. We absolutely have to stand in our power and discern who we're connecting with, why we're
Yeah.
connecting, and do our own due diligence. So those messages are crystal clear instead of corroded through a filter or through an unintended being that you end up speaking to.
Yeah, it's so all of it's so I'm always still learning. Like you said, it's all so fascinating. I do have a question on something you've said, a couple things. So I want to work with this word energetics because I've heard you use it. I think what you mean is the energy of whatever it is, the
Mhm.
energy of the person, the space, the timeline. Is that what you mean by energetics?
Yeah, but I explain energetics a little bit differently. And it's funny because a woman explained it to me. A woman really highlighted this. She's a psychotherapist, and she went through one of my psychic development programs last year. And she was like, do you know that in school they teach energetics as your emotions and your body language? And that is not energy. That is not the energetics we're talking about when we
That's
talk about
behavior.
energetics. Correct. Those are behavior. Those are your human aspects. The energy is literally the vibration you're putting off.
Right.
So when I talk about the energetics of something, it's just that vibration that you are putting off, not the things that you're saying, not how you're
Yeah.
showing up, not your emotions. Those are different. So the energetics of something is literally just the energy. You
Yeah.
take, I see people with 5 aspects: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and energetics. So when I say energetics, it's just that one aspect.
Okay, that's helpful because it is kind of the energy of, but a little bit
Yeah.
deeper than that.
Yeah.
And I think it's again, I'm so with the language, and it's important for us to understand what we're
It is.
saying and what we're talking about. I want to circle back to how you came into this rise of what you do now because it feels very different than managing Fortune 500 companies.
It is.
And I know we all have our own little journey about coming out of the broom closet. I used to joke with my first mentor and be like, I'm not going to be one of these people that just talks like this all the time in the
Yeah.
world. And now here I am. But,
And now you
you know,
are.
yeah. And I love
I
it.
Yeah, I remember saying, "I'm not calling myself psychic, like, I'm just not
I
doing
fought that
it."
word for a long time.
Yeah, like, I was in deep corporate, like, I worked with bankers, accountants, realtors, investors, doctors, lawyers, like, on a daily basis, and when I left when I was let go from that company, and I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna do my own thing." And I knew I was psychic. I loved that stuff, but I was like, "No, that's what I'm passionate about. I've got to still manage businesses."
Like,
And I
that's not
knew
a
I was
real job, is what I
right,
used to
that's
say.
like
Like, that's not a,
people
I'm
don't
from
respect
Boston. Like,
it.
that's not a real
Yeah, and I
thing.
thought like they're gonna think I'm goofy. It's funny. It's just something. It's for ha-has. Like,
Yeah.
can I
I'm going to
really
lose
be
my
serious?
credibility. No one's going
Yes.
to take me serious.
Yeah, especially I'm coming off of like the loss of a partner, and now all of a sudden I can see dead people. I just was like, this is silly. Like, I'm a very, one of the things that I'm incredibly psychic, work with energetics all the time. But one of the things is I'm also very much a realist. I'm not a
Yeah.
super woo person. I'm very real, really, very in reality. And so my guides were like, okay, that's fine. I learned all this psychic stuff. And then I was like, I need money now because I went through my savings, went through all my credit cards, and now I need money. And I was like, I'm going to go out there and be a business consultant. And my guides were like, no, you're going to be a psychic. And I was like, no, I'm
You're
not.
like, anyway.
Yeah. And we fought for months, and I was struggling. My accounts would go in the negative. There were times that I like couldn't buy anything. It was hard. It was hard. Never lost my house, but I came very close to it multiple times. Never lost my car, came very close to it multiple times. And finally I was like, I give up. Tell me. And they were like, all you have to do is call yourself a psychic. And I'd done all the legwork. Like, I went from in-person stuff to bringing my business online. I'd met somebody who helped me start a podcast. Like, I had a Facebook group. I had a program I created. I had a website. I had everything.
So you're doing readings and programs and teaching and everything
Yeah,
already,
yeah, I
just
wasn't
kind of
doing
like
readings. No,
undercover.
no psychic stuff. I wasn't doing
Okay.
anything psychic stuff publicly. It was like I created a program. I remember I sold one of them, and that was it. I created a program on how to start a business, on how to create a business. That's what I was good at, is businesses. And they were like, you have to call yourself a psychic. And I was like, no. And they're like, all the things that you're doing for yourself, you have to bring them into business. So I sat down with them. I was like, why do I have to call myself psychic? And they said, because you're changing the way that people see psychics. You're changing the realm of psychic. We taught you new things. Psychics don't do this. You've been helping psychics. You're changing it. You have to let people accept you as a psychic. The first month, now, mind you, before this, I'd spent like 18 months. Yeah, a good solid 18 months, not making any more than like $1,000 a month. That's it. And I came off
That's
of
rough.
multiple
Yeah.
6 figures. And so I was like, okay, I've got to do something. And the month started calling myself a psychic, I made $10,000 that month, and it
Wow.
never dropped ever. And I was like, oh, wow, okay. And what I realized is that this is my purpose. It's what I came here to do. There's a lot of things I'll channel, I step in and I do it, I create it because of the fact that I know this is part of my soul's purpose here. It's what I'm meant to create.
Yeah.
And the more that we do that, and it's not easy. I fought, I resisted. Even when I was making $10,000 a month, I was just like, no, this is uncomfortable. I can't tell this person. I can't let this person see it. And I can remember at one point, my brother, who I respect, we have a great relationship with, but he was kind of like, you're a psychic. Like, I've known you
Yeah. Like,
for
what's happening, Carrie?
35 years of your life. Like, I don't understand. And he was just like, hey, in one of your posts about rainbows and butterflies, you wrote the word, a swear instead of what you meant to write. And I was like, oh, geez, and I fixed it. And about 6 months later, I was like, you know what? I have to fix this. I have to work on my own internal belief about psychics, about how important this is, about the work that I do. And
Yeah.
6 months later, a crazy things happen. And my brother came to me. He's like, I need your help. Like what you do is freaking amazing. You know, like there's something going on in my house. He had a spirit in his house. And he's like, I need your help. Like this stuff is real. This is legit. And I was like, yeah, what do you think? I'm just like playing over here, you know? And we had talked about business, and he was like, the money you make is freaking amazing. And that's really what I have been able to do, is to show people that you can, that's being psychic and working with energetics is incredibly important across the board in any industry, in anything
Yeah.
you do. And you can make it incredibly successful in a very integrity filled way.
Yeah.
And that has been really important for my clients, for myself, but also I really feel like though down the road, I don't feel like it's there yet. I would love for it to be there, but I don't feel like it is. I know psychics and energy workers will be just as respected in every single industry across every walk of life, the
Yeah.
way every other industry is. We're not there yet, but we have
Right.
a lot of work to do. It's our work to do, not
Yeah.
theirs in accepting us. It's our work to show them that they can respect us, that we do have, you know, we're holding responsibility, we have integrity, and the value that we bring to the table because of the work that we're doing on ourselves and because of the alignment and the mastery of our craft. And that is
Yeah.
super important. Not these, you know, somebody called them the other day, they were like TikTok tarot card readers, and I'm like, not that, not
Yeah.
that. It's really the people who see and understand the art that we do and how we can bring such immense change and value to the world by doing that.
I think it's such an important way that you said it too. It's an art, so there
Mhm.
is an art form to it, and to the specificity of it, to giving
Yeah.
specific details, to knowing what you're talking about, I guess is what
Yeah.
you're saying. I think people don't realize as well. This has been a lot of people's little secret forever. I mean, I've
Mhm.
been working with pretty high power leaders secretly that want to know, okay, these are the deals I'm looking at, or these are the
Right.
companies we're looking at, and what can you tell me? For me, it's like, what can I know? What can I know about the culture here, about the trajectory, about their vision for where they're taking, all the little bits that someone might want when they're making that type of decision.
Yeah.
And governments have been using it, militaries have been using it forever. And so I
Yeah.
think you're right. We're not there yet, but I can feel that energy too. And it's, who knows, maybe it won't even be quite in our lifetime that it's to the degree that I think it one day will be, but we're
Yeah.
certainly on the path, right?
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't know that we will see it and the way that we want to see it, but you're right. Like high powered people use it. It's the middleman that doesn't. And most
Yeah.
of the world is the true middleman. And that's where we have to be integrated into because the leaders, they know it. It's like the best kept secret.
Yeah.
But we have been trained not to trust it and not to trust ourselves and our own intuition. And that's what we have to change.
Totally. Will you talk a little bit more about how you help people today in your work? Like, what does your work look like now? What kind of questions are people coming to you with on a one-on-one situation? I know you also lead groups and communities.
Yeah. So I do a couple different things. One aspect of my business is because I can do anything in the spirit world and in the psychic world and energetic world, I can teach anybody how to do anything. And so I have different levels of psychic development. And this includes I do medical intuition, I do physical healing, soul healing, shaman work, Wiccan work, regular psychic mediumship, you name it. I teach
Yeah.
it on multiple different levels, even animal communication. So I have a psychic development aspect of my business, both private masterminds, group programs, as well as a community, like a membership community, even a free level one. Then the other aspect of my business, I do readings and consulting for companies. And I do minimal readings. I tell people like I can do it. Like I can tell you exactly who you're meet, when you're going to meet, how many children you're going to have. I can tell you all that stuff. I don't enjoy doing it. I love doing the really deep, like, here's the potentials that exist. Here's what I see with inside of corporations, with reading the energetics, reading the blueprints of a company, just looking at all the different dynamics. So I do a lot of that and do soul readings, seven-figure blueprint readings. If somebody's meant to have a seven-figure business, I can see their blueprint. So I help people to really tap into that soul and that soul understanding, the spiritual understanding, whether it's business or themselves personally. So I do a lot of consulting on that
What
aspect.
a busy lady you must be. That
Yeah.
sounds
Yeah.
great. And I know everything's on your website, carriecardozo.com,
It
right?
is. Yeah. Yep. That's where most of my links are, or on social media. It's Carrie Cardozo on all social
And
media.
of course, we'll have everything linked in the show notes to make it easy peasy for everyone to find. And I know your communities seem so interesting because I was kind of poking through them, and there are many layers. So even if someone's maybe not ready for a bigger program, they can join your list and kind of just start getting in that pool, right? And
Yes.
understanding the way
Yeah,
you
I have
teach.
things that are free, such as like, my spirit team masterclass is completely free about how to bring your spirit team in and what their, what your spirit team should be made up to low investment, under $99, all the way up to my big master psychic mastermind is a $25,000 investment. So it's on all
Yeah.
levels. Yep.
But I mean, I think it's there are profound tools that you
Oh
can
yeah.
teach too that are,
Yes.
something that the individual takes with them for life. It's just
Yeah.
more deeply understanding things about ourselves that we probably don't know
Yeah.
are happening already, which
Yeah,
is
well,
really cool.
it's a really cool story. I work with a woman who works a lot in China, and she works with energy masters in China. And she came back the other day and she was like, "Do you know that the energy masters, I taught them how to work with energetics in a different way?" And they were like, "Where did you learn this? We have never seen anybody work with energetics like this." She's like, "So, thanks for teaching me." And I was like, "You're welcome." So we do, it is an intense, it can take you deeper than anyone has ever taken you before. I teach things that nobody else is teaching.
That's very cool.
So it's really powerful. So, and you
Those
can
are
use
my
it
favorite
anywhere.
too. When someone comes back
Yeah,
and is like, I have someone that just did a whole different program and it's like, I did this program and I am working with clients, but I'm really actually using everything that I learned from you. And it's like, well, yeah, because the information's either from a pure source or it's not. And there's,
yeah,
kind of two ways. And if it is like your work, they can use it across the board. It doesn't only have to be for business, right? It then,
correct.
like we were talking about, becomes part of you and is in every area of your
Yeah,
life,
yeah, you use it in every area. Yeah,
which is awesome. And I mean, who doesn't, especially the temperature of things now? Like I keep telling people, you need your intuition more than ever, maybe. You need to be able
yeah,
to know what you're feeling, or are you grounded? Are you ungrounded? Are you taking everyone else's information and what are you saying? You know what I mean? So more than
yeah.
ever, I
It's
think
so
we need it.
important, and even like getting out of fear and knowing what is your truth.
Yeah.
So important now. It's really recognizing your truth. Yeah.
And I don't know if you'll agree. I think you'll agree with this, but I also really have been highly, I think, always encouraging people, but making sure that we're making our own choices, decisions, what we say, how we move through the world, that's in integrity for us and what we know to be true.
Yeah, I agree with that. One of the things that, the way the world is right now, it actually is activating people's egos. And people are mistaking that as their soul because they're not slowing down to really tune in. They're
Yeah.
proving, defending themselves, trying to make a point. But if we can tune into our soul and really connect with it, it is the most powerful way to lead
Yeah.
in life, in this life today. And that's what I really encourage people to do, is to really find that connection with your soul. There's no better relationship than that relationship with your soul. It's the most important relationship in your life.
What I've heard you say before that I really loved was that's really where confidence comes from, and I
Mhm.
love the clarification you give that true confidence, there's not an ego attachment to it. It's not from an egotistical place. It's from a soul place, right?
Yeah, it's connecting to that soul. The soul has all the answers. It has your roadmap. It knows what you
Yeah.
can do. And it'll say, yeah, like it doesn't use these words, but it'll be like, yeah, this is gonna scare the junk out of you. And that's
Yeah.
okay. When Mike passed, I knew my soul was just like, this is horrible and it's okay. Like,
Yeah.
this is really bad and it's okay. It's going to be the most beautiful experience of your life once you navigate through it, and it's
Yeah.
okay. So the more that we can connect to our soul, it just kind of evens life out a little bit, so it's not so drastically up and down in fear and fighting and defending. It just becomes okay, and it
Yeah.
allows us to navigate things better, and it makes life so much more fulfilling. So much more fulfilling.
Yeah. Well, the most important relationship we have is with ourselves first and
Yes.
foremost, right?
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I told you I was going to do this. I would love to
Yes.
shift gears and do our spirit speed round. They're not hard questions, they're all
Okay.
about you,
Sure.
and you can answer however you like.
Okay.
The first question is, will you share one thing that really shocked you or was unexpected about your gifts as you really came to understand them and work with them? Is there something shocking for you?
Um, I think the amount of spirits and different energies that I can connect with, that I thought there was like you just talk to one spirit. So that really shocked me, of like how much information there really is out there, and the way
Yeah.
in which I receive the information. Like, I hear the spirits talking as if they're in the room. And that really shocked me. You don't hear about that a lot. So
Yeah,
I think
that's
that was
really
really
interesting. Not everyone has that objective
Mhm.
clairaudience, which is so cool.
Yeah.
If you got to spend a day in the spirit world, got the full tour, you got to spend time with everyone you've ever known who's crossed over, it's almost time to return, and your guides tell you you have 1 hour left and you can spend it with anyone who's on the other side. Who do you choose and why?
It would be Mike. It would
Yeah.
totally be Mike. I think my life has changed drastically since his passing. And I know he
Yeah.
had a huge part in it. And there's so many things that have changed, and he would definitely be the person I would spend it with,
Well,
hands
I'm
down.
sure he still has a part in continuing
Oh,
to
I
support
yes,
you and encourage
yes,
you
he does.
too. So, I love that. That's a great answer. Even though we have spiritual gifts, we have very human lives. What's one quirky thing about you that people might be surprised to learn?
Oh my gosh, God, I feel like there's a couple.
I know. That's why I always
Um,
feel like, oh, I think I have a lot.
yeah, I'm actually a baker. I own a
That's
bakery.
cool.
So that I guess that's maybe quirky about me. I'm not super like into woo-woo stuff. A lot of
Yeah.
people don't realize that because I am psychic. So maybe those, I guess.
Do you
Yeah.
do that? Do you run the bakery yourself? Do you choose the
hmm
menu? Do you do the
hmm
whole thing?
hmm
How
I have a team
exciting.
that works there, like so it's open
Yeah.
now. But yeah, I do the majority of the baking. So I go in at like 4:30 in the morning sometimes and just bake.
Wow. That is a really cool,
Yeah.
interesting, unexpected thing about
Yeah, like
you.
I was there. Did renovations, so I was there last night till 10:45 at night baking to make sure we were up and ready to go for this morning.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, I do
Oh,
have a great team.
I'm
Great team.
sure you must. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
like
the
a
only way
phenomenal.
anything
Yeah, they're phenomenal.
runs, right? You can't be all the places
Yeah, no,
at
when
all the
people are like
times.
you make bagels and scones, and I'm like, yeah, I don't like making scones, but yeah, I make all of that. Yeah,
Oh, I love it. That's so
yeah,
cool. And it's nice to have another thing to pour your energy into as
yeah.
well. It
It's like
sounds
my
like you have
meditation
several.
time. It's like
Yeah.
you just go in, it's quiet, you bake. That's it.
Yeah. So cool.
Yeah,
Will you leave us with a pearl of wisdom? What's one piece of advice you wish that you'd had earlier on in your understanding of your gifts?
yeah. I would say the one piece of advice is get really good at being wrong. I speak this a lot. A lot of psychics, like the whole thing about being psychic is being right, is getting right information, is being accurate. Get
Yeah.
really comfortable with being wrong because there's so many lessons in the inaccuracy in getting it wrong. And there's no shame in it. Let your ego go as you're learning to tap into your psychic abilities. Your ego is just for one, it's going to block the right information from coming in, but it's going to hold you back. When we're learning our psychic gifts, if you get it right, oftentimes there's no drastic change in your life. If you get it wrong, like they tell you to put your shoes on and you walk out of the house and don't put your shoes on, you're going to recognize it. If you
Yeah.
thought they told you to put your shoes on and you put them on, you're going to constantly be wondering, did I hear them? Did they actually say that? Or was it my head? So
Mm.
there's so much growth in the getting it wrong as a psychic, and it's going to get you to get to a place that you very rarely get it wrong. So allow yourself to be in that space.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Well, thank you for being here today with us
Thank
and
you.
sharing all of your wisdom. And anyone who is interested in learning more about you, signing up for your newsletter, we'll send them to carriecardozo.com. And
Yes.
again, all of that will be in the show notes. Thank you for being
Awesome.
here and for shining your light.
Thank you for having me. Thank you very much.
It's been a great time. Hey, beautiful souls. What an interesting conversation. What did you think about that? Did you resonate with some of the things that Carrie was talking about and with her stories? I don't even know how she has time to be a baker. It seems like she's doing a million things all the time, which how wonderful. But I do agree with her that we're going to be having many more people with psychic gifts in leadership, and that more and more leaders are going to be seeking people with the ability to read energy and work with the energy. And these gifts are going to be only more and more highly sought after and valued. But again, like we always talk about here, you heard Carrie say it as well. It starts with us understanding our own energy, working with our own emotions, understanding our own intuition and how to use our gifts and manage our energy and emotions. So, like everything, it all starts within. And I love that she really highlighted the importance of those relationships and meaningful connections in our life as being paramount over just about everything else. So hopefully you have gained some insight and really enjoyed this conversation with Carrie Cardozo. I know I did. Make sure to check out her website in the show notes. And as always, thank you for joining me here. You are such an important part of the community and the reason I do this. And if you're enjoying the episodes, I would love it if you would subscribe wherever you're listening and even leave a little review. It always means a lot because so many people are listening to the podcast that aren't subscribed, but the subscriptions help other people find the podcast. So please share this episode with a friend who you know is into psychic and woo-woo stuff, or at least a little bit curious to learn about it in a grounded way. And I would love it if you would like and subscribe to the pod. Big hugs, lots of love. Bye for now from inside Spirit Speakeasy.